the LaxFactor podcast.
What is up, Lacrosse fans? You're watching episode number 131 of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast, and today we have lacrosse action to talk about in hindsight, which is a beautiful thing. We had Bellarmine face Mercer yesterday, and then we had Utah face off against Denver. Before I get in, so we're going to talk about the games, how everything rolled, and all that good stuff. Before I get into it, as always, be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to support us beyond the norm, you can go to LaxFactor.com. You can get yourself some shorts. We've got t-shirts with the brand. We've got regular lacrosse t-shirts. I keep showing you the same stuff, so maybe we'll get some new crap in here to show you. Or you can listen to the audio version only. If you're watching on YouTube, go to anchor.fm/LaxFactor or anywhere where you get podcasts. And we're also on Instagram and all those other places. But the easiest way, like, subscribe, share, but really just subscribe, man, and just slam that like button like an idiot. So let's get into it. First game of the college lacrosse season was Bellarmine facing Mercer at Mercer. And one thing that has become apparent as a result of these lacrosse games is that I absolutely stink at setting lines, and I should probably just stop, but I'm not going to. Mercer, in my defense, I picked them to win the game by 6.5. You know, I picked a 6.5 point spread, thinking that they would actually cover that. I felt like Mercer was legitimately going to win this game by 7-8 goals in that area. Alas, Goldsmith doesn't play, which hurt Mercer pretty badly. It kind of totally changed their dynamic offensively. They now go from having, the leading scorer in the country running around on the field for them to no one of that magnitude that can sting a defense like he can. So that hurt. As we kind of check the game flow, lead changes, Mercer jumped out to an early lead with the goal off the opening faceoff. So it's 1-0 right off the bat, and I'm thinking, hey, I'm looking pretty good for my line here. Teams traded goals between the first and the third, with Mercer taking a 2-goal lead at one point, 4-2, and then Bellarmine coming back 4-4, then Bellarmine up 6-4, then Mercer tied 6-6. A ton of just both teams going back and forth. And then Eric Rubak's goal in the fourth with 12:30 left. Bellarmine never let Mercer back in after that and kept at least a 1-goal lead through to the end of the game. One of the keys of the game, and not in a good way, I predicted Mercer would win a bunch of faceoffs. I didn't know that through 4 quarters, Mercer was going to win all of the faceoffs, or through 3 quarters, they won all of the faceoffs. Wood was 15 of 15 at one point, dominating Lamb and anyone else that went at him. The first faceoff Mercer lost was after Bellarmine took a 7-6 lead. Mercer went early and gave Bellarmine that faceoff, and at that point, it was 15-1 in favor of Mercer on the faceoffs. But despite that faceoff disparity overall, Bellarmine, it didn't matter. Goldsmith not playing took Mercer so much out of their offensive rhythm that it just didn't matter. They could win every faceoff, get every possession, and they just could not get things to click on the offensive side. The end stat for Wood of Mercer was 18 of 19 from the faceoff dot. So that's crazy. Despite that disparity, that Bellarmine was able to pull off the W, even without Goldsmith playing. It's crazy that despite that stat line, that Bellarmine was able to pull it out. Defensively, both teams played well. Both teams played aggressive. Both came out double teaming, beating on each other left and right. And there was a lot of really aggressive double teams, a really aggressive slides and help defense. Clean but physical game. Seemed the officials, despite, also being back for the first time in a long time, they did a pretty good job of not letting it get chippy, because it did get pretty physical at times. And, you have the hype surrounding getting back on the field and all of that, and then it's a conference foes that you're doing it against, so you know each other well and probably have a deep-seated hatred for each other. So defensively, it was very physical, and if you're a defensive player, it was a good game to watch. You saw a lot of good help defense, a lot of good team defense. Quick stat. Turnovers. Bellarmine forced Mercer into 31 turnovers. It looked really sloppy, as we expected, but Bellarmine played the cleaner game overall. And oftentimes, especially in these early games, who plays the cleaner game? That's the team that's going to win. And in this case, it was Bellarmine. Their defense gets some credit. I think a lot of it was Mercer not having Goldsmith, but you got to give Bellarmine's defense credit for just playing their game and keeping Mercer and any dodging at bay. They really did do a good job of cutting down transition looks, cutting down any look in terms of where slide comes, and you've got heads turning and guys on the backside. The recovery was excellent, and actually I was impressed in the Denver game as well. Guys did get beat at times, but the recovery and the slide packages were a lot tighter than I expected, and I think that kind of follows that the defense is always a little bit ahead of the offense at this stage in the season. That was a little bit of a ramble. Bellarmine overall, like I said, they looked like they played the better game, and not having Goldsmith to contend with Goldsmith, that definitely helped them a little. On the Bellarmine side, John Robbins, he had a very good game. To the point where you don't often notice a defender sticking out as part of the broadcast, but Robbins kind of stuck out. 3 ground balls, not a ton, 5 caused turnovers, and a shot, and a couple of his late caused turnovers were key. Mercer had a man up late in the 4th, and he picked a pass off to kind of break things up. He went up the field. Robbins did get stripped after he picked that pass off and took off upfield, but that stalled the Mercer man up play out. And that Robbins just played well, and he had a huge impact. And then LeClaire for Mercer, he looked good as well. 3 ground balls, 5 caused turnovers, and a shot. Same exact stat line as Robbins. Now, I did pull these stats off of Mercer's website, so I'm not sure how vetted these all are. So if I quote a stat that's just wrong and not in the official box score, I wrote this literally right after the game yesterday. A lot of us watched this game via Twitter. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's handle here. If I remember, I'll put a screenshot in. But yeah, there was like about 100 people at any given time watching the game being live streamed from some dude's phone. So I kind of did get to see what happened. It was a little blurry. Goaltending for Bellarmine. Bellarmine won this battle. Riley came up with a huge save while Bellarmine held an 8-6 lead that felt like it really hurt Mercer at the time late in that game. Kelly from Mercer, he made a huge save late in the 4th that resulted in a Mercer goal on the next possession, and I had made note of that one specifically, thinking that could have been a turning point. Here Mercer could have gone down, I think, by 2 again, or maybe even by 3, and he makes a save, and then Mercer scores a goal, and it flips it. So at that point, I was like, Kelly had a tough go so far in the game, but he was starting to play a little tighter as the game wore on. Riley Bellarmine had 10 saves against 7 goals, and Kelly for Mercer had 6 saves against 9 goals. So Riley 100% won the goalie battle, 58% in the cage versus Kelly's 40. But both of them actually ended up playing really solid in the 4th. Kelly got it together finally by the end. Offensively, pretty standard fare, pretty boring, early in the season game. 7-6 going into the final 10 minutes. Nothing crazy, but some solid lacrosse overall when things were clicking. It would have been nice to see Goldsmith run it around. Quick stat offensively, extra man. Both teams totally stunk on extra man. Again, not something that's a huge surprise this early in the season. Mercer was 0-4, Bellarmine was 0-2. So we saw 6 penalties called, and no one stuck a man-up goal. Bellarmine, as expected, as we talked about in the pregame, they spread things out. Nobody came out and lit the world on fire. Roth and Ruback each had 2 goals. Brown and Playstead each went for a goal and a helper. And then 3 guys put up a goal, Bowie, O'Rourke, and Legnard. Is that how you say that? Someone could spell that phonetically for me in the comments, but Legnard put up a goal as well. Mercer was hurt badly, as we keep saying. Mercer was hurt badly by lacking Goldsmith. I don't know what his deal was, if he was hurt. Maybe there was some COVID crap. Denver had 12 guys that weren't available to play, and there was no official word that I saw on why, and they didn't mention in the broadcast, at least that I listened. Maybe I was getting a beer at the time. Who knows? But they were hurt badly. Stewart, though, played well. 2 goals, 2 assists. McCarthy, Rockefeller, Dooley, Marks, and Wood each put up a goal. So we talked about in the preview, the reason that Mercer was so good offensively was because you had Goldsmith drawing all the attention, and you had guys flanking him all over the field that could stick shots from outside, that could two-dodge, once Mercer draws a slide, and it was very apparent that Mercer just had a hard time getting things going without having Goldsmith. The close on this one, so I got to eat turds. I got to eat some turds on this. I totally butchered the prediction on the line on both games. I legit thought Mercer was going to put it on Bellarmine. I would have even said, without Goldsmith, they're probably still 2 or 3 goals better than Bellarmine. Not so. Bellarmine came out and played good. They made me eat my words, and I should just probably stop doing lines altogether. I stink so bad after today. I could certainly play the what-if game. I'm sure Mercer is playing the what-if game a little bit, at least in terms of just trying to fix their expectations and avoid some PTSD, in the sense that they are not the team they thought they were, certainly not without Goldsmith. But yeah, in the end, I stunk. Bellarmine played a great game. I would count that as an upset probably, but without Goldsmith, you don't know. I think Goldsmith is the handicap in that game. You take him away. These are two evenly matched teams that squared off and played a good game. I watch a lot of those mid-major games where the streams, especially because they play. I watch a lot of those types of games usually during the week, during the season, because there's a lot of them up. So good game and all. Thank God that the dude from Twitter posted it, because as I was sitting here, my wife had come in the office at one point and she's looking at it. She's like, "What are you watching?" I was like, "This dude is doing God's work and he's live streaming this first game of the year that no one thought we were going to be able to watch." So I didn't have to suffer through watching someone posting notes on Twitter. So that was pretty interesting. Next game, Utah at Denver, and this one I picked a 9-goal victory. I predicted a 9-goal victory or more. I thought Denver was going to win by 10, 12 goals over Utah. Probably, I'm going to double down on this one. The Mercer one, I admit I got wrong, minus you Goldsmith plays, who knows what happens. But with this one, I predicted a 9-goal spread. Denver was without 12 guys. We'll talk about that here, but in the end, Denver just had a hard time getting quality looks through the entire first half. And they did that last season a little bit. When I watched the Duke game and the North Carolina game, they looked very similar in terms of just their offensive struggles early. Took them a while to get into the flow. And by the time they got into the flow, they started looking like a good team come that third quarter where Tierney had shredded their asses in the locker room at halftime. And they came out and they did play a little bit more inspired. They just couldn't get shots off, just didn't click. That was it. So game flow, lead changes, how that rolled. Denver got off 10 shots in the first quarter to Utah's 6. Didn't do anything for him. It was Utah that struck first. A Zach Johns save led to a Jordan Hyde goal with 3:20 left in the first. So that was our first goal, was 3:20 deep into the first quarter. Denver didn't score again until their 15th shot. Ethan Walker found space on the left alley, got his hands free. Jordan Hyde scored in transition, and then Sammy Cambier with a long pole come up and stuck another transition goal. Denver failed to stop the ball, and that was a key all day. Denver had a hard time stopping the ball in transition. Utah scored a bulk of their goals in broken play situations and in transition. So Utah ends up with a 3-1 lead that stood through the half off that long pole goal in transition. Jack Hanna scored 2 in a row just 4 minutes into the third quarter to get Denver back at 3s. The first was a snipe from the wing. The second was a sweep across the top. The slide didn't come. You can see Hanna kind of start to sweep across the top with his right hand. The slide almost comes, and you can see Hanna hesitate for a second, and then it doesn't come, and then Hanna just goes right down the alley, runs right by his guy, and sticks it. They traded goals from here. Utah, oh, wait, hold on. Yep, yeah, so... Second, blah, blah, blah. Yep. And then they traded goals. Utah, Bradbury scored. Then Morrill scored for Denver. Then Bradbury scored again. And then Walker scored for Denver. And then things were knotted up at 5s. Walker dodged up the left side and made me look dumb on that goal that tied it up at 5s. He dodged from X, came up. The adjacent slide did not come down to pinch him, and he just kept running past his guy and stuck one left-handed. I think it was over John's right shoulder. Made me look dumb, man. You're a Dodger now. Utah, they had a man-up opportunity to end the third. Thompson made a big save, got the ball out, and then Denver got themselves a lead, Morrill to Walker. So Thompson played a really good game. So I think that if he can continue to play like that, he's going to be that goalkeeper. And then he makes a huge save. Ball goes up in transition, hits Morrill kind of down the right wing, who hits Walker kind of trailing the play, and Walker just stings one from out top. So that was huge. Utah, that was off a man down. That was a man down goal. Utah was man up at the time when Thompson made that save and then got the ball up. So that was a huge swing right there for Denver to give them the lead. And then Morrill picked up another helper hitting Sullivan, and that gave Denver a 2-goal lead, and then they'd continue to answer. Every time Utah would get back to within a goal, Denver would score. I think Denver held a 3-goal lead late before Utah scored the 2 late at the end there to make things a little bit more interesting. Face-off X, I predicted that Denver was going to handle their business at the face-off dot. So the face-off battle was won by one of the teams, 12-8 overall. But it was a surprise that it was Utah that won that face-off battle, 12-8. Brams helped keep the game in reach for Utah over the third and fourth quarters by just winning faceoffs that normally you wouldn't have thought he would have won against how do I pronounce Stithakis? I always have a hard time pronouncing that name. Brams won 7 faceoffs to Denver's 1 over the third period, despite Denver outscoring Utah in that period 5-2. So imagine if Utah wasn't winning those faceoffs after each of those Denver goals, what would have happened to Utah? The wheels would have come off badly. So Brams deserves a lot of credit for keeping Denver at bay by winning faceoffs each time they scored a goal over that third quarter. Denver won the last 2 faceoffs of the fourth quarter, though, which that was kind of key in helping them hold on because Utah scores a goal, Denver wins the faceoff, Utah still scores another one, and then Denver won the last faceoff of the game. So that was key for Stathakis to win both of those. At the end of the day, Cole Brams went 12 of 20, and Stathakis didn't do that bad. He was 7 of 14, and I forget who the other dude Denver had that took faceoffs was, but he went 1-for-6, I believe. So he was kind of the one that really lost his ass to Brams, was the backup. Brett Booz, he went 1 of 6. That's who it was. Defensively, both teams played well. I didn't look at either team defensively and think, oh, crap, they look like crap. Now, you got to give Utah credit because they played just good enough defense to totally take Denver out of their game. I think if you were to sit Tierney down, and he answered you honestly, he would probably tell you that his team pretty much just played so poorly on offense and had such terrible flow that they did that to themselves in the first half, and I would agree with that. I don't like to talk a team down that played really well, but the reality is Denver just looked like hot shit on the offensive side of the ball. And it wasn't because Utah was doing all of these insanely crazy things. They were in the right position. They weren't getting totally beat, but a lot of it was just Denver not being aggressive enough. They were dodging, but they didn't look committed to the dodges in the first half. They weren't taking that extra step. They were trying to get shots off a little too early, I felt, into their dodges instead of trying to take that chance. I call them do or die dodges, not necessarily to the point that you dodge to the point of getting stripped by a triple team, but do or die in the sense that you got to go to the cage like you are really trying to beat your man and really trying to get a shot off. And at times I felt like in the first half, Denver didn't look like they were committed to the dodging game and to really drawing the defense, forcing slides, and they didn't get looks as a result. So I think overall that helped Utah, Denver's not being cohesive. But then also Denver on the defensive side was without Colin Squires, who's their best pole, and I think missing him hurt them a little bit in transition. You got a team leader there that's supposed to be, kind of anchoring the defense a little bit and helping. So I think just having another guy with not a lot of experience, but another guy with top quality experience on the field hurt Denver, especially in transition. Quick stat defensively. Man-down defenses. Utah's man-down unit went 1 for 8 on the day. Yet another stat that shows how over the top they kind of played was Utah got 8 penalties in beating up on Denver. I felt like a couple of them were ticky-tacky type fouls. I didn't watch the game and think, holy shit, Utah is playing such physical lacrosse that they're just beating Denver up. I never thought that at any point, but you have 8 penalties, and Denver could only cash in on 1 of those chances, so that was huge for Utah. Denver held Utah to 1 of 3, so both man-down units did well in the game, but Utah, they kind of win the man-up battle in that game as well. Kyle Smith of Denver, he forced 3 turnovers and had a GB. Sammy Cambier of Utah, 2 caused turnovers and 4 ground balls. And was it Cambier that scored the goal as well? I can't believe I'd left that stat out. All in all, nothing crazy defensively. Denver slides really early. So I like with Denver, with the Mercer Bellarmine game where you were seeing dudes slide, you were seeing them slide aggressively and violently. Denver slides so early in a play that it ends up just being kind of a player swap where it's like, hey, I'm going early for you. I'm there. Got him. You run back, find somebody on the backside. So Denver went so early, you didn't see them. Didn't look like they were playing overly physical. Both teams, I think, played pretty physical while the ball was on the ground. But, just a lot of solid defense. And for Utah's side, a lot of staying home and just sitting back and let Denver make mistakes, and Denver made mistakes. So I think Utah sticking to their game plan and not trying to be aggressive played well into allowing Denver to do a lot of the dirty work in terms of just playing poorly for Utah. So that was good. Goaltending, both goalies played tough. Even though Johns had to eat the loss, Johns had a good game, huge swing in the game. During Denver, Denver put up 5 goals across the third, so that was the huge swing in the game. And then Thompson during that stretch put up some stops as well. So Denver, while Thompson was having his quarter and playing really tough, it was at the exact right time for Denver to be able to say, hey, Thompson's stopping you guys now. Now we're getting things going offensively. So once again, without Utah winning those faceoffs and without their goalie playing tough, what's Denver do in that third and fourth quarter? It would have been rough for him. But both goalies, I thought, had a pretty good outing. Zach Johns, 16 saves, 9 goals against in the loss, and Zach Thompson, 11 saves, 8 goals against with that huge third quarter in the win. Offensively, Denver, 10 shots on goal in the first half, 1 goal. Second half, 15 shots on cage, 8 goals. So Denver was way more aggressive getting to the cage. They got upfield and created transition opportunities, and they looked a lot more comfortable in the second half, especially in that third quarter. I think that Utah was kind of sitting back like, oh, shit, what's happening now in the third? This is kind of what we expected. And then I was thinking Denver might roll, and they might end up with a 4 or 5 goal win by the end of it. But Utah settled down, and then they kind of got back to playing quality ball again, and that was why they were able to chip in. But overall, once Denver got things rolling in the third, it was kind of, they started to look like the team that you expected them to look like. We get to Utah. Oh, and then a quick stat for offenses, for the offensive side of the ball. Turnovers. Denver turned the ball over 6 times in the first quarter and only 7 times the rest of the game. Now, in the second quarter, after they cleaned things up, I think it went 6 turnovers in the first, and then it went 2-3-2. For the rest of the game. So even though they cleaned things up in the second quarter, that didn't translate to goals because Johns was playing tough in cage. But they in the second quarter they started playing better, and then in the third was when things really went for them. But they cleaned up those turnovers. They played better ball. Utah stats. It looked like Utah was sunk, and Denver would end up really rolling at 9-6. I figured at that point, where it was 9-6, I was like, well, Denver's probably going to win this game 10-6 or so. I figured they'd stall it out a little bit. They'd probably get a cheap goal towards the end as Utah had to extend their defense. But Tyler Bradbury, he goes 1 for a goal and an assist over the last 2 minutes and 30 seconds of the game to get Utah back within reach by the end. Bradbury ended up with 3 goals and 2 assists for Utah. He looked really good. Jordan Hyde, 2 goals, and then 5 other guys put up a point each between goals and assists. Denver stats. For Denver, tale of 2 halves. For first half, 1 goal. Second half, 8 goals. And Walker, Hanna, and Morrill, as we kind of expected they would do, led the way in that second half. I expected them to do that the whole first half and the second half, but they didn't. But they did get it together, and those 3 guys played really tough. And throw in Ted Sullivan as well. Sullivan, a goal and a helper. Morrill, a goal and 2 dishes. Jack Hanna, 2 goals and an assist. And Ethan Walker, 3 goals and an assist. So in the end, the usual suspects for Denver, they figured it out. They got things going. Ethan Walker ended up having himself a good game with 3 goals and a dish. Leading scorer duties, though, for the day go to Tyler Bradbury for Utah. So he outperformed all of these other guys. So good for him. But, the Denver figured it out. Did I say that wrong? Denver figured it out. And the close on this game, in the end, Denver, they looked awful in the first half. Awful. They got looks, but they obviously did a terrible job scoring the rock. That was a lot of their looks were just sailing right. They missed just a lot of shots and a lot of decent looks in the end. They just didn't put anything on them. Kotler specifically struggled a little bit. His first shot that he put on cage looked like he was literally just trying to hand the ball to Johns. He took a couple of bad shots that I noticed. Hanna sailed a couple early on. He looked aggressive early on, but he still just wasn't hitting the cage. So in the end, Denver, they just didn't look aggressive enough. They were getting those shots off, but they weren't putting everything that they had on them. They weren't committing to the dodges enough that they were able to score those goals. I think a lot of that's when you're aggressive in the dodge and you get that shot off, you're able to put that on cage. Whereas if you let that defender just get that shove on you and you're, kind of limp dicking it into the dodge, you're going to have a limp dick shot that you get put on cage here. So, a lot of cupcake shots that helped Johns a little bit early, but still he stood his ground and played well. Second half, Denver looked about what we expected them to look like. They kind of outscored Utah 8-5 over the second half. Even that wasn't ideal for Denver, and that would have been enough to piss Tierney off, I think. But 8-5 over the second half when you're playing like shit in the first is better than nothing. Had Denver been able to not give up those 2 goals late, things look better for Denver, and maybe Tierney's not quite as angry going into the locker room, but I bet you those dudes are going to be punished come Monday for the way that they played in this game. It's one of those deals as a coach. If you were to get Tierney's ear in an honest way, he would tell you straight up that we should have beat them by 10, and we didn't because we played like crap. You're not going to hear him say that publicly, though, because you don't want to take anything away from Utah, but I can. I have no ties to anybody, and I truly believe that, hey, hats off to Utah for coming out and playing just a balls-to-the-wall game on Saturday, but the reality is that Denver, I think if they play these guys 5 times, Denver wins by 6 goals 4 out of the 5 times, and this is the anomaly. And I think a couple of those times Denver wins by more. So that's just the way that it rolls, I think, if you're being honest. But, hey, man, Utah took the field with a bunch of freshmen and sophomores playing against a team with a bunch of juniors, seniors, and grad students on the field. I mean, you look at that attack. 2 of Denver's attackmen are grad students. Hannah's a senior. Kotler's a grad student on the midfield. I think Simmons may be a grad student as well, although he might not be. But either way, it's just a hell of a job. A bunch of young guys that don't know any better went out there and just gave the top 5 team in the country all they could handle. So that's a hell of a job by Utah. Utah, Holman and company and the coaching staff there. Just a hell of a job. I think that's it. Luckily, we got a short day here today. Short show, so I'm not going to ramble beyond that. I just wanted to talk about the games. Next up for Denver is Duke and North Carolina. So they're going to have to play a lot better. Denver, obviously, and I think they will. I think that they looked so bad, it can't be worse necessarily outside of they're playing, Duke and North Carolina in these next 2 games. And then Utah, who does Utah play? They end up playing, you'd think I would have been organized enough and I would have just wrote that into the show. Utah has Bellarmine next, so they're going to play at Bellarmine. And then Denver, they play, Denver is going to play Duke at Duke next, and then North Carolina 2 days later at North Carolina. So, Utah, they got a chance here now to prove, hey, that wasn't just a weird anomaly. And I dare say, to prove that they're as good as they looked on Saturday, they have to come out and beat Bellarmine. If they lose to Bellarmine, then we're just saying, okay, that was an anomaly, and Denver just played like hot shit. If Utah wants to prove that they're for real, beat Bellarmine, and then we're going to be like, holy crap, what is Holman putting in their Gatorade out there? Because the team that young is going to take lumps. So that's why I call that an anomaly. But for Denver, to beat Duke and North Carolina, they're going to have to play a hell of a lot better. And like I said, last year they played Duke and North Carolina early, and they looked sluggish in both of those contests offensively. They did not put a full game together in either of those losses to Duke and North Carolina. And then they finally did play better against Notre Dame and got a win there. But that was a Notre Dame team that was not as good as the Notre Dame team is right now. Notre Dame was a little bit down last year. Notre Dame this year is fully reloaded with transfers from Penn and who'd we talk about? Bucknell, Will York. So Notre Dame's going to be a completely different animal, but I think I'm rambling because I don't think Denver plays Notre Dame. So that doesn't even matter. But yeah, Denver's next 3 contests, Duke, North Carolina, and Air Force before coming back home and playing Marquette at Denver. So Denver's got a crazy schedule, probably one of the toughest schedules of all of the overall blue bloods here, although I think Duke's is pretty rough too. So that's it. I'm going to stop rambling here. We're going to get on with it, and we will be back and do the preview show. Most likely we're going to move. I keep changing things around just based on my own schedule, but I think that it's a better spread to do the Saturday morning live stream, to do the Sunday morning weekend in review, and then to do the weekend preview, like the preview show on Wednesday. So we're going to go Saturday morning live stream at 10 a.m. every Saturday morning. We're going to go Saturday's games recap on Sunday morning like you're watching right now, and then we're going to do Wednesday is the next weekend's preview show, and then we'll throw some crap in between. If there ends up being games on Sundays, we'll probably do a little bit of a show Sunday night or Monday. We'll figure that kind of crap out. But watch the schedule. It's going to be Saturday morning at 10 a.m. live stream, Sunday morning putting out the recaps from Saturday, and then Wednesday right back into the previews for the next week. So as always, thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You can listen anywhere where we have podcasts, but anchor.fm/LaxFactor is our home, and you can go to LaxFactor.com, get yourself some swag and all that good crap. Be sure to come back this Wednesday. It'll be released Wednesday morning for the preview show for the next weekend's games. And as always, I said it already, but I'll say it again. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And Hoost is out.